Hello everyone. Welcome to Lifey Life. Does stress change the work of the brain? 5 interesting facts about stress. The first topic of stress was raised by the Canadian physiologist Hans Selye back in 1936. Almost 80 years later, this subject is still not fully understood, and every year scientists, and us along with them, are waiting for more and more unpleasant surprises. It turns out, excitement, in a chronic form, affect all areas of our lives, including even road traffic. How does IT know about knowing stress? Stress may cause serious accidents. French researchers conducted a study that linked the accident with insomnia and the sense of chronic fatigue, frequent companions of stress. Of course, their discovery is difficult to call revolutionary. The driver, asleep at the wheel, is a danger, it's obvious. However, the French first drew the doctor's attention to the care with which they should treat patients' complaints about lack of strength and what consequences regular use of sedatives, causing drowsiness, can have. Obviously, car owners need to carefully select the means that will help cope with stress, preferring those that do not affect care and concentration, or even contribute to their strengthening. Those WHO worry, more influenza. The journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences published a study on colds. It turned out that it is stress that leads to an increased production of cortisol, which in turn turns off the immune system, not allowing it to respond to inflammatory processes. Thus, people with an overloaded nervous system are more easily infected with viruses and much more tolerant of their consequences. It turns out that from the protracted rhinitis and a headache can help not only antiviral, but also anti-anxiety agents, especially if you suddenly began to hurt more often than usual. With this conclusion, and agree with the University of Michigan, USA. When stress turns into a long, repetitive or extremely strong form, the body fails. If this condition is prolonged, it affects all other systems, even the heart and brain cells. The whole issue is in duration. Our organism does not see differences between big and small stress. Any adrenaline situation triggers 1,400 biochemical processes, and even a quarrel with a neighbor or a sharp braking at an intersection can lead to unpleasant consequences. Even worse is that many people, despite the physical symptoms of mental exhaustion, are unable to notice or admit that something is wrong. Modern citizens are too accustomed to the crazy rhythm of life and do not notice the moment when it's time to take a breather, consult a doctor, or to consult with a pharmacist about the nervous system supporting the therapy. So, for example, the National Public Radio of the USA conducted a survey among the population. 14% of respondents claimed that they were not at all subject to stress. But is this really the case, especially given that stress is part of normal human physiology? The very birth and living in a big city is a kind of stress. This conclusion was reached by the staff of the Institute of Mental Health in Douglas. The risk of anxiety disorders for citizens is increased by 21%, 39% more often they suffer from affective disorders. Although the authors of the study are not yet ready to propose a solution to the problem, they stressed that mass urbanization has become a real challenge to public health. Moreover, stress causes the so-called cortical inhibition. On the one hand, it is aimed at the protective functions of nerve cells. The brain's reaction to conditioned and unconditioned stimuli slows down and softens, preventing the load from passing to the beyond. On the other hand, this effect prevents us from making reasonable timely decisions. How can you deal with your feelings? Meditation effective will survive of stress than a normal rest. Scientists around the world regularly address the issue of preventing stress. So researchers from Norway and Australia focused on meditation and published the result of their discoveries in the journal Frontiers in Human Neuroscience. It turned out that the so-called non-directional meditation, When a person tries to relax as much as possible, but does not concentrate, for example, on the rhythm of breathing, but allows thoughts and emotions to arise freely, activates a certain part of the brain. This part of the brain is most active when we rest. In fact, it represents a basic operating system, a network that takes on external tasks that do not require our concentration. It is noteworthy that a mental task, such as non-directional meditation, activates this network more noticeably than ordinary rest, commented the measurements made with MRI, the co-author of the study and the neuroscientist at the University of Oslo Sven Devanger. Thus, basic meditative techniques in just 15-30 minutes can restore you no worse than several hours of sleep, and using them, for example, at work is much easier than taking a nap for a couple of hours without leaving the computer. Stress changes the work of the brain. Finally, we should not forget that stress itself is also a protective reaction of the body. Adrenaline splash helps to respond as quickly and efficiently as possible to situations that seem dangerous to the body. It even helps to improve memory. During a trip on a roller coaster or watching a blockbuster, the hippocampus is activated, a site of the brain that is responsible for learning new and remembering old information. In the case of chronic stress, for example, months of anxiety due to money or career, the work of the hippocampal cells is disrupted, the old become more vulnerable, the new ones are formed less often. In the case of the transition of stress into a toxic form, these cells may even die. All this leads to memory impairments and reduced ability to learn. A person who lives in constant anxiety, physically loses the ability to enjoy, the level of dopamine falls. Long-term stress also causes changes in the amygdala, brain amygdala, a site responsible for fear and anxiety. This affects not only the general state, but also the decision-making process. That's why we tend to do things that we bitterly regret. Before the system fails, support yourself with meditative techniques, for example. There is nothing shameful in attending a psychotherapist or drug help. The main thing that the drug was prescribed by a doctor and was taken exactly as prescribed. In this case, it is worth using drugs that can protect nerve cells from stress, and take care of side effects. For example, even all the usual valerian and motherwort can cause drowsiness, so the preparations containing them cannot be taken if you are going to drive. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like the video and subscribe for our new content. Click the bell sign to stay in contact with updates from us. Hope seeing you back on Lifey Life.